The Gospel is from Mark chapter 7. Now when the Pharisees and some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus, they noticed that some of his disciples were eating with defiled hands, that is, without washing them. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they thoroughly wash their hands, thus observing the tradition of the elders, and they do not eat anything from the market unless they wash it. And there are also many other traditions that they observe, the washing of cups, pots, and bronze kettles. So the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, "Why do your disciples not live according to the tradition of the elders, but eat with defiled hands?" He said to them, "Isaiah promised rightly about you hypocrites, as it is written, 'This people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching human precepts as doctrines. You abandon the commandment of God and hold to human tradition.'" Then he called the crowd again, and he said to them, "Listen to me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside a person that by going in can defile, but the things that come out are what defile. For it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come: fornication, theft, murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, licentiousness, envy, slander, pride, folly. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person." The Gospel of the Lord. Wow, that's quite a laundry list of awful things in the human heart, don't you think? Now, not that it should take us by surprise. We see every day on the news the unbridled attacks that politicians and others level at one another. And if you're on Facebook, that can be even worse. One group of folks thinks that their liberty means they have no obligation to anyone else, and the other makes thinly veiled, snide remarks about their ignorance and selfishness of the first group. There's truly nothing new under the sun. We see around us people who don't seem to know how to interact in ways that indicate we're a society. Common courtesy sometimes seems like a thing of the past. So today I'd like to talk not so much about that, but the lesson from James. And you all know that I'm not a biblical scholar, but a little bit of research indicated that James is supposed to have been written by Jesus' brother James. I read that the book lacks the earmarks of scholarship because it doesn't have very many citations, so it makes it difficult to date the book because, they can't say, well, geez, he quoted Peter here, or, whatever. It was difficult to date, but I read that rather than being scholarly, the book is considered to be more organic as far as its presentation. Now I can get behind the organic idea. That works for me. It seems to me like if the James who wrote this letter really was the brother of Jesus, he probably knew something about how Jesus thought and what Jesus said. And maybe, just maybe, the letter can be free of some of the agendas that drove the writers of the canonical Gospels, each of which was written for a specific purpose to a specific audience. Maybe, just maybe, James is a little more direct and a little more pure. Maybe not. The thing that struck me about today's lesson is that underneath the words lies the great commandment: love the Lord your God with all your heart, strength, and mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Now, loving God is something we can do from time to time, particularly when we feed ourselves with scriptures and writings about the scriptures. James speaks to this with, "Every good thing and every perfect thing is from above." We have been taught how to love by those who went before and by those with whom we have fellowship. God is there for us as a loving parent is there for his or her child. Even if all the parent can do is hold their child's hands while they travel a difficult road, they do what they can. Most of us can love in return, and if we didn't have parents who loved us, maybe we were lucky enough to have someone else who did. God gives us every good gift and every perfect gift. This translation that we read even says every generous act of giving is from above. So it follows to me that if we love, truly love, that comes through us from above and lands on the people around us. And that's a good thing. Now we get to the really interesting part. How do we love our neighbors as ourselves? Well, first of all, we need to love and really love ourselves, or our love for others has no worth. We need to heed the advice we always get on the airplane. Put your own oxygen mask on first, and then help the person next to you, because if you don't put your oxygen mask on, you're probably going to pass out while you're helping them, and that doesn't do anybody any good. If you're starving spiritually, you can't do anybody else much good at all. Once you're strong enough to go out into the world, then you can love others. But how? James takes some time to explain that to us. First of all, be careful about your tongue. My main downfall. Be quick to listen, but slow to speak. This is pretty much the opposite of all that we know in our society today. News is instant, and opinions about the news are even quicker. Some folks go so far as to make a point that if somebody actually learns something and changes their opinion based on what they have learned, they lied to us the first time, or something equally absurd. Better, of course, to say, don't confuse me with the facts, my mind's made up. Now, the luxury of being slow to speak isn't something we have a lot of in this day. But if we even take the time to count to 10, maybe 5, maybe we won't blurt out something that will hurt someone else. I think this is part of what Jesus is saying in the gospel. All the ugly things hiding in our hearts are likely to just leap out of our mouths and hurt our neighbor. So first of all, let's be careful. Second, James tells us to be slow to anger. I know I hear things on the news that just make my blood boil. I hear someone say something similar, and since my mind's made up, I think maybe I need to enlighten the foolish frog who has the misfortune to cross me, or even just meet me. So I count as high as I can and just shut up. I think I need to shut off my instant anger and make the wild assumption that my neighbor might just conceivably have as good a reason for their opinion as I have for mine. Sometimes I find that if I shut up and then we start to talk, they agree with me on almost every point except 1 or 2 issues, and they have good reasons for their opinions on those issues. Who knew? James tells us to rid ourselves of all rank growth of wickedness and of all sordidness. I don't know that I'm qualified to opine on that, but all of us have our little issues where we put ourselves at the center of our little universe and run roughshod over everyone else. We're admonished here, I think, to watch that we don't do the roughshod riding intentionally. We're all going to do it accidentally, but let's not do it on purpose. Then James gets to the heart of the matter. Be doers of the word and not hearers only. It's all well and good to have all you need. But you can't go then with everything you need and all your comfort and tell somebody to be full if they have no food. We have such a lack of basic mercy and good sense in our society today. We all feel so righteous that we have a home and we aren't getting evicted because we pay our bills. We fail as a society to see the generational poverty that has been forced on others, and we act like our sitting at a desk is worth more than somebody who works on a meat processing line at a packing house who provides us our food. So James tells us to get off that kick and make sure your neighbor has some food and maybe a place to live if you can manage that. We cannot be person makers any more than our country can be a nation maker. You hear a lot about that right now with Afghanistan. But we can be decent and kind. We can speak respectfully to everybody we meet, and we can realize that without immigrants from our southern border, we wouldn't have any food to eat because the fields and orchards wouldn't get picked. Without janitors and garbage men, we would be swimming in filth. Without those who stock the shelves, we wouldn't be able to waltz into any store we like and just pick up what we need. We need to appreciate the people who do those basic things for us. The people we see as less than are the people who make our privileged lives possible. Finally, James reinforces this, that telling us straight out that religion that is pure and undefiled is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress. Orphans and widows were the least of the least in that time. Women were prevented from owning anything. Their male relatives were tasked with taking care of them. And in the absence of such a protector, the widow and orphan were at the mercy of the world. Today's widows and orphans are all around us, doing the jobs we are unwilling to pay a living wage for. We are tasked with treating them as we would want to be treated. To borrow the title of Bishop Curry's book, Love is the Way. Amen. Seems to me like now we'll say the Apostles' Creed.